Who are the most unlikely criminals we'd never expect? Let's find out. Starting with number 6, the serial robber model. Monique Marina Agostino, a real-life Instagram model and wannabe actor, got herself arrested by an elite strike force police unit that normally goes after motorcycle gangs, right after she was released on bail for a handful of other crimes she was appealing. Monique has had a bit of a rough patch, getting herself tangled up in a series of crimes, including helping to pull off 4 robberies in Sydney back in 2018. But here's the thing, she was out on bail, appealing her 18-month sentence when she decided to break the rules again, sending the cops on a manhunt. Enter the elite strike force police, Strike Force Raptor, which is a name that came out of an 80s action movie, swooped in to save the day. Luckily, they managed to arrest Monique, which we're sure the surrounding neighborhood was grateful that an elite strike force was able to take down an Instagram model. We're sure they earned their pay with this one. Along with outstanding warrants, Monique was charged with being in possession of some allegedly stolen goods, which isn't really a good look for the gram, but she's far from the only one posting dumb things on that platform. Monique's not your average troublemaker either. She's a single mom who grew up in the posh Sydney suburb of Belrose, and even attended Killarney Heights High School, which is kind of like living in Palo Alto or Cupertino, where Google and Apple are located. So even though Monique came from a wealthy neighborhood, she still went down a bad path. Back in 2019, she was slapped with an 18-month sentence for those robbery shenanigans, where she drove a bunch of dudes around to break into shops, and let's not forget the separate spate of charges for causing chaos at Blacktown Westfield Shopping Center. She kind of got into everything: contraband, stolen goods, and even a bit of knife-wielding action in Target. Maybe she was trying to slash Target's already low prices. But wait, we're not done. Monique's got a flair for the dramatics as well. She represented herself in court after her lawyer withdrew from her first case. She actually told the judge that it would be her fault if she gave Monique time because she's threatened self-harm in the past. The judge wasn't buying it and still handed down a pretty hefty sentence. Monique appealed it, got bailed out, rearrested, and now 2 years. Number 5, 2 wives. Rexford Lynn Keel Jr., a resident of North Carolina, admitted to being responsible for the passing of his wife, Diana Alejandra Keel, and was sentenced to at least 32 years in prison. But the story behind his conviction is nothing short of insane. It all began with the discovery of Diana's body, tragically dumped in the woods. The Nash County Sheriff's Office wasted no time in pointing the finger squarely at Keel, even raising suspicions about the passing of his first wife back in 2006. Diana's disappearance, reported by her daughter, sparked a frantic search, ultimately led to the grim discovery. Amidst whispers of a troubled marriage and looming divorce, the plot thickened. There were talks of domestic issues between Keel and Diana, and friends and family hinted at tensions brewing beneath the surface. The circumstances surrounding Diana's passing were anything but straightforward. The authorities treated it as a crime from the get-go, so of course they were very interested in Keel. But Keel wasn't about to stick around for those conversations. He attempted to flee, but the law caught up with him during a routine traffic stop in Arizona while he was attempting to flee to Mexico. The subsequent trial was a media frenzy, forcing a change of venue due to the extensive coverage. Despite the challenges, Keel's guilt was undeniable, and he eventually pleaded guilty, getting 32 years in prison. His first wife's passing was still ruled as an accident at the time of this video. Number 4, the worst friend ever. Darryl Evans, a smooth-talking con man, conned his friends out of £377,000, sending him to prison. Evans, with his slick talk and charming demeanor, managed to convince his friends to hand over their hard-earned cash for what they thought would be big returns on their investments. Who wouldn't trust a guy who calls himself a financial advisor, right? But the problem was, it was all a sham. Evans, the little eel that he is, took over £377,000 from his friends, promising them the moon and the stars while he lived it up on their dime. The fact that he knew full well that almost all of these people couldn't afford to lose the money they handed him, since it was a bunch of retirement funds and pensions, shows exactly what kind of person this guy is. He was so into scamming that he continued his scheme even after getting busted by the cops. This dude actually made himself the executor of someone's will, then took all their money and put it into his own account, because he didn't want to limit himself to only stealing from living people, you know. Darryl Evans was eventually investigated by the police and arrested. During his trial, Evans had the nerve to stand in court and spin more lies, trying to weasel his way out of trouble by blaming everyone else around him. So much so that the judge even commented on how fluid the garbage flowed out of his mouth. Apparently, no one knows where all the money even went, since Evans claimed that the police destroyed all the evidence of his investments. We're sure there was a collective eye rolling when he spat that one out. Thankfully, justice prevailed, and Evans got slapped with an 8-year sentence based on his refusal to say where the money went. Number 3. Doctor Scam. Dr. Olabunmi Adegbo Sheik created a phony tenancy agreement and a fake landlord to get nearly £12,000 in benefits for a flat that didn't exist. And he got away with it. Olabunmi, aka the Crooked Doc, decided to get a little creative with his housing situation while training as a medic in the UK. He claimed to be shelling out £900 a month for an apartment in London, when in reality, he was just chilling with his mom in Kent. Because why not, right? He also managed to rake in a sweet £12,000 in housing benefits over the course of a year. Not bad for a guy living with his mom. Of course, Olabunmi's little scheme didn't last long. Of course, someone actually did their job after a year, but still. And it was quickly discovered that the address didn't even exist, let alone the landlord. The cops caught wind of his antics, raided his mom's place, and found all the evidence they needed to bust him. You'd think a doctor would be smarter than to pull off such a stunt, but here we are. Olabunmi's excuse was that he wasn't able to practice medicine in the UK yet because he failed a couple exams. According to his mom, he's since passed them and has been in practice ever since. In the end, he got slapped with a 12-month community order and 100 hours of unpaid work. So he basically got away with it. It's dumb that a future doctor thought it would be a good idea to risk all that work and his career for such a little amount of money. Hopefully, he's a better doctor than he is a scammer. Number 2. Frozen winnings. Judy Carroll, who won a $5.2 million lottery jackpot, pleaded guilty to scamming 6 people after she won. Because whenever there's a scam, the first place you look is at lottery winners. Back in '89, Judy and her hubby hit the jackpot, scoring a sweet $5.2 million. But instead of living it up, he kept a low profile, probably to avoid long-lost relatives coming out of the woodwork. Now, fast forward a bit, and Judy starts telling tales about her accounts being frozen by the IRS over unpaid taxes. Classic move, right? Except it was mostly a load of baloney. So her friend, Kelly Lotak, ended up helping out by handing over a whopping $622,000 in prepaid credit cards and cash transfers. We want to be friends with Kelly, but Kelly wasn't alone in being duped. 5 other poor souls fell for Judy's sob story, coughing up an extra $618,000. To avoid paying everyone back, Judy repeatedly said her husband had his identity stolen and that her accounts were frozen. Her friends accepted these excuses at first, but they got old quick. Kelly eventually called the IRS herself to ask about the frozen accounts and finally uncovered the fraud. It turns out that the IRS did freeze her accounts, but it was only one and for a short time. Judy was finally arrested in Montana by the FBI, and now she's pleading guilty to wire fraud and tax evasion. Judy took a plea deal, and now she's got to pay back nearly $1.6 million to her victims and the tax man. As for Kelly, well, let's just say she's learned a valuable lesson about trusting friends with deep pockets. Bet she won't be lending out her credit cards anytime soon. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here for our past release to find out how this seemingly innocent kid was able to scam gullible Ferrari owners. Number 1. The disability scam. Shahab Reza, who was profoundly deaf, one of the severest forms of hearing loss, ran an £800,000 disability allowance scam that landed him in prison for 9 years. Reza was pulling off his massive con while spending the cash on diamonds and jet-setting around the globe, like you do. But here's the thing, he roped in his own family, including his wife Shanaz and their 2 kids, Abbas and Zainab. They were all in on the action, submitting fake invoices for sign language interpreters like it's nobody's business. And they didn't just stop there. They even set up fake companies all over the place to launder the money. Nice family, right? So fast forward to the courtroom drama, and Shahab gets hit with a 9-year sentence. His wife Shanaz and son Abbas aren't off the hook either. They're facing their own time behind bars for their roles in the scheme. Meanwhile, Reza's wife Shanaz bawled her eyes out in court as she got slapped with a 22-month sentence. His son Abbas got a suspended sentence because apparently he was under his dad's influence. 2 other women, Deva and Nutella jumped on the benefits gravy train as well, submitting fake claims left and right. And they didn't even need sign language interpreters. They just wanted a slice of the scamming pie. In the end, it's a real family affair gone wrong. The Reza clan's lavish lifestyle came crashing down, and now they're facing the consequences. But hey, at least they'll have plenty of time to brush up on their sign language skills in the slammer, right? And who knows, maybe they'll even start a Fraudsters Anonymous group behind bars. By all appearances, 24-year-old Daniel Lezen was just a young trust fund baby with an actual baby face to go with it. It came to no one's surprise that he had access to a collection of rare Ferraris because, of course, his dad was, as he claimed, a powerful Russian oligarch. Lezen's Ferrari collection has been a subject of interest among his followers on social media, where he would often post pictures and videos of himself with the cars. Lezen's collection included models such as the Ferrari 488 Spider, Ferrari 458 Italia, and Ferrari California. However, it's unclear how Lezen acquired his Ferrari collection. Some have speculated that the cars may have been rented or leased for the purpose of his social media posts. It's also possible that Lezen may have purchased the cars through fraudulent means or through the proceeds of his alleged illegal activities. One of the people who was impressed by Lezen's collection was Rob Ferrari, the owner of Adventure Drives, a company that offers exotic car tours and driving experiences. According to Ferrari, he first met Lezen at an exotic car event in Florida where Lezen was showing off his collection, something we'll get into a bit later. Lezen's extravagant lifestyle was called into question after several individuals accused him of fraud and deception. In addition to the aforementioned oligarch story, Lezen would often pose as a billionaire and claim to have made his fortune through crypto trading and investments in real estate. In a time when so many young people were earning millions from early investments in obscure cryptocurrencies, Lezen's claims weren't all that hard to believe. The individuals who accused him of fraud fully believed his stories, mainly because they wanted to believe him. What Lezen was offering was every Ferrari collector's dream, and Lezen, despite being all of 24 years old at the time, knew this all too well. He already had extensive experience finding ways to entice people looking for something extraordinary and rare. For many novices and even many experienced investors, falling for any sort of scam can be quite easy, especially if the scammer is extremely charismatic and experienced in being the person you want him to be to sell you on the investment. Lezen's alleged deception went beyond his fraudulent schemes. He also pretended to be a Russian billionaire and used the name Daniil Lyalin to conduct his business deals. He would often claim that he had made his fortune in Russia and had connections to high-ranking officials in the country. However, it was later revealed that Daniil Lyalin was a fake identity created by Lezen to deceive people. The Russian embassy in the UAE confirmed that they had no record of anyone by that name and that Lezen had never held a Russian passport. But this information was only discovered later on, after the schemes were revealed by investigators and victims. For years, Lezen built a reputation of wealth and power, despite not having any of either. One man, David Eisen, had an interesting perspective on the entire situation as someone from the outside looking into the disaster that was unfolding before the luxury car community's very eyes. For example, one of Lezen's alleged victims, a businessman from the UK, claimed that he had invested over $200,000 in Lezen's crypto scheme. Lezen was subsequently arrested in Dubai in 2020 following an investigation into his alleged fraudulent activities. He most likely was just one of many people who haven't come forward with their stories of getting ripped off by Lezen. Obviously, for Lezen's Ferrari collection, he didn't have an actual source of consistent income to justify owning such a collection. Travel agent David Eisen is the man behind Lux Rallies, an exclusive travel service that offers high-end driving experiences to luxury car enthusiasts. Eisen's unique approach to travel planning has garnered him a reputation as one of the most sought-after travel agents in the industry. One of the things that sets Lux Rallies apart from other travel services is its focus on supercars. Eisen's clients are passionate about high-performance automobiles, and he has made it his mission to provide them with experiences that cater to their interests. Recently, Eisen found himself himself hearing stories about a 24-year-old car collector named Daniel Lezen. According to Eisen's clients, Lezen had amassed an impressive collection of luxury and exotic cars, including a Lamborghini Aventador, a Ferrari 458 Italia, and a Rolls-Royce Ghost. Eisen was intrigued by Lezen's story and decided to do some research of his own. While conducting his research, Eisen discovered more crazy stories about Lezen. He found out from his wealthy travel clients that Lezen was claiming he had somehow gotten a hold of future allotments of the latest and greatest Ferrari model, the Ferrari Monza SP1 and SP2. Every luxury sports car collector wanted this car, especially collectors who favor Ferraris and other Italian supercars. In order to make these claims, Lezen had to convince people that he was part of a prestigious program that only the wealthiest people in the world have access to. The program is called Ferrari Ambassador, and it's designed to reward the company's most devoted customers. Ambassadors are selected based on their history with the brand, including the number of Ferraris they have owned and how active they are in the Ferrari community. Once a customer becomes an ambassador, they're given access to a range of exclusive benefits. These include invitations to special events, access to limited edition vehicles, and the opportunity to order custom-built Ferraris. One of the most coveted benefits of being a Ferrari ambassador is the allocation privilege. This means that ambassadors are given priority when it comes to ordering new Ferraris. When a new model is announced, ambassadors are the first to receive information and are given the opportunity to place an order before the general public. Allocation privileges aren't given to all ambassadors, however. They're reserved for the most loyal and influential customers. These are individuals who have a long history with the brand, own multiple Ferraris, and are active in the Ferrari community. Lezen claimed that his family was a part of the program and that they owned over 75 Ferraris, and that because of his family's high status in the program, he could obtain as many allotments as he wanted. In other words, Lezen could pre-order the car every luxury sports car collector wanted to get their hands on, and he was the only person willing to do it. Allocating cars on your own is a very risky business if Ferrari finds out what you're doing. The company is very particular on who can sell their vehicles, so Lezen had to get creative in how he would sell the mysterious Monzas. To do so, he established a few different shell companies, but it was his friendship with Ferrari dealer Rob Ferretti that really helped him spread the scam around. Rob Ferretti, who we mentioned earlier as the owner of Adventure Drives, is also a well-known name in the exotic car community on YouTube with over 849,000 subscribers on his channel, Super Speeders. But recently, Ferretti has found himself in the spotlight for a very different reason: his alleged involvement in a scheme to sell allocations of the limited edition Ferrari Monza SP sports cars for profit. Ferretti has been linked to Lezen. According to court documents, Ferretti and Lezen allegedly conspired to obtain allocations of the limited edition cars and sell them for profit to third parties. Ferretti says that Lezen approached him and started talking about his cars, which included rare and exotic vehicles such as a Pagani Huayra and a Bugatti Chiron. Lezen allegedly boasted about the cars he owned and offered to let Ferretti take them for a spin. Ferretti says that he was impressed by Lezen's collection and decided to take him up on his offer. Over the next few months, Ferretti and Lezen reportedly became friends, and Lezen even participated in some Adventure Drives events. But Ferretti says that he had no knowledge of Lezen's alleged involvement in the Ferrari Monza SP scheme. In a recent YouTube video, Ferretti addressed the allegations and explained that he had no idea that Lezen was involved in any illegal activities. Ferretti says that he was shocked and disappointed when he learned of Lezen's arrest and that he has since cut ties with him. He also emphasized that Adventure Drives has always operated with the highest ethical and legal standards and that he would continue to do so in the future. In a recent YouTube video titled "My Involvement with Dan Lezen and the Ferrari Monza SP," Ferretti further addressed the allegations and explained his side of the story. In the video, Ferretti admits to being involved in the scheme but claims that he was unaware that it was illegal. Ferretti explains that he was approached by Lezen, who had offered him the opportunity to purchase an allocation of the Ferrari Monza SP. Ferretti says that he agreed to buy the allocation, but that Lezen later told him that the car had been sold to someone else. Ferretti claims that he had later learned that the car had actually been sold to a third-party buyer at an inflated price. Ferrari goes on to say that he had no knowledge of the larger scheme to sell allocations of the cars for profit, and that he never received any money from Lezen or anyone else in connection with the alleged scheme. The video has received mixed reactions from Ferrari's fans and the wider car community. Some have praised Ferrari for being open and honest about his involvement, while others have criticized him for not taking more responsibility for his actions. Either way, Ferrari certainly regrets being associated with Lezen. There's currently very little evidence to suggest Ferrari actually knew and participated in the fraudulent dealings, but of course, he still faces scrutiny nonetheless. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned and not click away for our past release on this scammer who pretended to be powerful, influential women in Hollywood. According to court documents, Lezen allegedly purchased a Pagani Huayra from Pagani Beverly Hills in early 2021 for $2.9 million. However, despite signing a sales agreement and taking possession of the car, Lezen allegedly failed to make any payments on the vehicle. Pagani Beverly Hills has filed a lawsuit against Lezen seeking the full purchase price of the car, plus interest and attorney's fees. Similarly, Veltricron claims that Lezen agreed to purchase a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ from the dealership for $730,000 in late 2020. However, Veltricron alleges that Lezen never made any payments on the car and has yet to return it to the dealership. Veltricron has filed a lawsuit seeking the full purchase price of the car, plus interest, attorney's fees, and the cost of retrieving the vehicle. JPCM, another luxury car dealership, claims that Lezen agreed to purchase a Rolls-Royce Cullinan from the dealership for $370,000 in mid-2020. However, JPCM alleges that Lezen only made partial payment on the vehicle and hasn't made any further payments. JPCM has filed a lawsuit seeking the remaining balance owed on the car, plus interest and attorney's fees. Lezen hasn't yet publicly commented on the lawsuits. It's unclear why he allegedly failed to make payments on the luxury cars or why he hasn't returned the vehicles to the dealership. According to court documents, Lezen and several co-conspirators allegedly worked together to allocate Ferraris to customers who were willing to pay bribes in order to receive priority status on the wait list for the high-end sports cars. The indictment alleges that Lezen and his co-conspirators would then allegedly manipulate Ferrari's allocation system to ensure that these customers received their vehicles ahead of other customers who weren't willing to pay bribes. The scheme allegedly began in 2018 and continued until 2021. The indictment alleges that Lezen and his co-conspirators received bribes ranging from $5,000 to $25,000 per vehicle, and that they allocated at least 12 Ferraris through the scheme. There were also several banks who lost upwards of $300,000 on the deals. These banks loaned out money to various people involved in the deal, leading to multiple levels of monetary loss. Speaking of banks, much of the evidence that the FBI gathered stemmed from financial transactions from JP Morgan. Several non-certified copies were released during one of the aforementioned civil suits and showed the exact amounts Lezen was accepting. These documents were classified as wire activity, meaning they could be used as evidence for wire fraud charges. His father, Alexander Lezen, is named in several of the financial documents. Though federal investigators couldn't find any evidence that he was aware that his name was being used on the transactions. Some have speculated, however, that in fact Alexander may have helped his son escape certain lawsuits. In the end, the feds decided not to charge Alexander due to complete lack of evidence. Instead, it appears that Dan used his father's name fictitiously, thus frauding his family as well as his other victims. On June 2nd, 2022, Lezen was arrested by the FBI in Miami on charges of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The charges against Lezen carry a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine for each count. Lezen may not spend much time behind bars, especially since this is his first felony charge, but he'll most definitely have to dig deep into his wallet to fulfill his punishment. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you'd rather have for the rest of your life, an electric or a gas-powered car.